You are not as needed as you thought, and that might be the beginning of your freedom. There is a quiet panic that lives in people who are always available, the kind of panic that says, if I stop showing up, I will disappear. You feel it when your phone lights up and you rush to answer. You feel it when someone pulls away and you chase after them with kindness. You feel it when silence feels like a threat. But this fear is not your fault. It was planted in you. You were taught to confuse love with usefulness, presence with performance, worth with obedience. So you became someone who is always reachable, always replying, always saying yes, and deep down always afraid that if you stop, you will be forgotten. But what if that belief is the real lie? What if being constantly needed is not love, but manipulation in disguise? And what if disappearing a little is the only way to find who you truly are? Carl Jung believed that the greatest tragedies happen not when we are rejected, but when we are accepted only for the masks we wear. And that is what happens when you become always available. You are no longer seen as a human being. You are seen as a role, a function, a habit. The people around you may not even notice it. They do not need to. They have gotten used to pressing the emotional button that is you. Need comfort? Call them. Need distraction? Text them. Need approval? Pull them close with just enough affection to keep them hanging, and you respond every time. Because deep down you fear being abandoned more than being used. And so you trade your presence for connection, your silence for validation, your peace for access. But here is what no one tells you. The more available you are, the less you are valued. The more often you respond, the more you are taken for granted. The more you give, the more others forget to ask, how are you really? The tragedy is not that they use you. The tragedy is that you let them, because somewhere along the way you began to believe that this is love, that this is how it works. But it is not. Love does not demand your constant presence. Real connection respects boundaries. True care understands your silence. You are not supposed to be anyone's emotional emergency button. There is a freedom that begins the moment you stop being available, not out of anger, not to punish, but to reclaim. When you let the phone ring, when you wait before replying, when you leave a message unanswered because your peace comes first, when you sit in silence and realize that nothing broke except the illusion that you must be needed to be loved. Carl Jung wrote that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires a breaking away from the collective. You are not a lifeline. You are not a cushion for chaos. You are not a supporting character in someone else's story. You are a whole person. And that is the truth they do not want you to know. Because once you realize it, you will stop performing. And when you stop performing, you become powerful. You become free. You become you. You are not exhausted because you do too much. You are exhausted because you give yourself away for free. There is an energy inside you that is more valuable than time. It is more rare than talent, more fragile than love. That energy is your attention. And in today's world, your attention is the most stolen currency on earth. You are taught to think that attention is unlimited, that you can scroll endlessly, respond instantly, say yes repeatedly, and never run out. But attention is not infinite. It is fuel. It is breath. It is life force. And the reason you feel so tired, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, is not because you are doing too much, but because you are giving too much of yourself away without awareness. Carl Jung called this psychic energy. It is the invisible fire that powers your thoughts, your feelings, your identity. And most people don't lose it through trauma or disaster. They lose it through little leaks. A notification here, a toxic conversation there, a fake smile in a meeting, a forced apology just to keep peace, a message replied out of obligation, not care. You are drained not by intensity but by repetition. The unconscious repetition of giving and giving without remembering to protect. Think about this. Every time you react to something unworthy, you spend energy. Every time you defend yourself against a pointless accusation, you spend energy. Every time you rush to fix someone else's chaos, you spend energy. And energy spent without return becomes fatigue. Fatigue becomes numbness. Numbness becomes despair. This is not weakness. This is misdirection. You are not broken, you are misused. The world does not teach you how to guard your energy. It teaches you how to appear helpful, how to be polite, how to stay connected, even when the connection is hollow. But Carl Jung warned that what you resist persists. The more you deny your own depletion, the more you suffer its consequences. You think you are being strong by being present for everyone. But true strength is not in reaction. It is in discernment, in knowing when to engage and when to protect. The people who manipulate you the most are not always loud. They are subtle. They sense when you are emotionally available, and they drain you through guilt, flattery, dependency. They don't ask for your energy. They pull it from your reactions, from your need to be liked, from your silence when you should have spoken. They survive not on their own strength, but on your unguarded kindness. And every time you answer out of habit instead of intention, you feed the pattern. So the first act of healing is not kindness, it is clarity. You must begin to track where your energy goes, who gets it, what drains it, what nourishes it. You must learn to sit in discomfort without rushing to soothe someone else. You must know when to say no and not explain. You must build invisible walls where your peace begins. This is not selfish, it is sacred. You only have one well of energy. Spend it wisely, because when your attention is scattered, your power is diluted. But when it is protected, your presence becomes magnetic. People start to notice. You say less, but are heard more. You do less, but impact more. Because now your energy is not leaking. It is aligned. In the next chapter, we will look at what happens when people start to notice your shift, how your unavailability threatens those who depended on your emotional compliance, and why their discomfort is the proof that you are finally becoming free. Silence is not absence. It is presence without permission. There is something terrifying to those who rely on your compliance when you suddenly stop being predictable, when you no longer reply right away, when you no longer smile to smooth tension, when you no longer explain every silence with an apology. To them, your withdrawal feels like a rebellion. But it is not rebellion. It is clarity. You are simply beginning to choose yourself. And that scares those who were never interested in the real you, only the version of you that served their comfort. Carl Jung believed that the moment you withdraw your energy from the external world, you begin to encounter the truth of your own being. That is why people get uncomfortable when you stop reacting. Because when you no longer play the same role, they are forced to examine their own. You were the emotional stabilizer, the peacekeeper, the rescuer. But now that you have stepped back, they are left in the discomfort they always avoided by leaning on you. and that discomfort is not your responsibility. You were taught that pulling away is cruel, that silence is rejection. But the truth is, it is only cruel to those who depended on your silence to avoid their own noise. When you stop reacting, people feel lost, because your reaction gave them a sense of control. They pressed, you responded. They pulled, you followed. It was not a relationship. It was emotional conditioning. You became a mirror for their insecurities, a fixer for their chaos, a cushion for their guilt. And when you finally stop, the illusion breaks. Silence becomes your shield. Distance becomes your clarity. Withdrawal becomes your power. You are not being cold. You are being sovereign. There will be backlash. You will be called cold, distant, selfish. Not because you are wrong, but because you stopped being easy. You stopped being emotionally cheap. And for the first time, they are left alone with their own noise. Let them sit in it. Let them feel it. Because your absence will say what your presence never could. It will force them to see what they ignored while you were always available. And some will return. But not all should. Because not everyone deserves access to your healing. Not everyone is meant to walk with you through your wholeness. Let your withdrawal become your filter. Let it reveal what needs to fall away, because not everything you lose is a loss. Sometimes it is a beginning. They wanted your reaction. Instead, you gave them your absence. In a world that thrives on noise, silence is a disruption. You were taught to explain yourself, to respond quickly, to always clarify what you meant, how you felt, what you needed. But silence is not confusion. It is choice. It is no longer performing clarity for others. It is you choosing not to offer access to those who only want control. When you stop reacting, the game changes. They can no longer predict you. And people do not fear your silence because it says nothing. They fear it because it says everything they cannot manage. Carl Jung knew that silence is not passive. It is a conscious withdrawal from dysfunction. And the reason so many fear your silence is because your voice once served their convenience. You used to smooth things over, keep peace, fill the air. But now, by refusing to react, you are no longer an accomplice in emotional manipulation. People don't always want connection. Sometimes they want control that feels like connection. And when you step out of that dynamic, they are left with their own chaos. Silence, then, is not rejection. It is revelation. It reveals who was truly listening, who only stayed because you filled the space with validation, who only valued your presence when it was easy to consume. When you become silent, they lose their script. They cannot provoke what does not respond. They cannot manipulate what does not react. And that absence becomes a mirror. They must face themselves, and many cannot. So they attack, they question, they blame. But it is not you they are upset with. It is the discomfort your silence reflects. Silence breaks illusions. It ends cycles. It frees you from the need to explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You are not silent because you are weak. You are silent because you are done being drained. You have learned that your energy is sacred. Your peace is not a public service. Your emotions are not for performance. Now your silence says, I am no longer available for confusion. I am no longer accessible for manipulation. I am no longer participating in games where I lose myself to keep others comfortable. And from that silence, something powerful rises. Not noise, but presence. Not fear, but freedom. Because when silence comes from strength, not from fear, it becomes your language of sovereignty. They may have shaped your silence, but you get to decide your voice. There comes a point where you realize no one is coming to save you. Not because people are cruel, but because they are too busy trying to be saved themselves. For years, you may have shaped your identity around others' needs. You softened your voice to avoid conflict. You shaped your boundaries to keep others comfortable. You allowed their expectations to become your blueprint. And now you wonder why you feel lost, disconnected, like a stranger in your own life. The answer is simple but heavy. You stopped being the author of your own narrative. Carl Jung said that individuation is not about becoming someone else. It is about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And remembering is not always pleasant. It comes with grief, with anger, with an aching awareness of how long you've lived on autopilot. Inner authority is not loud. It is not reactive. It is the steady knowing that your feelings are valid even when no one else agrees. It is the power to walk away from what does not align without begging to be understood. It is choosing peace over performance, stillness over applause, and solitude over being surrounded by people who never truly saw you. Most of your suffering came from abandoning yourself to be liked. And now, every act of reclaiming feels like rebellion. But it is not rebellion, it is resurrection. You are learning to trust your no, to honor your yes, to stop asking for permission to exist, and that quiet shift changes everything. When you reclaim your voice, not everyone will clap. Some will distance themselves. Others will try to pull you back into the mold they once fit you in. Let them. Your growth will always offend those committed to your old version. But you were not born to be palatable. You were not created to be convenient. You were born to be whole. And that wholeness does not come from being everything to everyone. It comes from being fully yourself, even if that self is too much for some. Let your silence be selective. Let your presence be intentional. Let your no be sacred. Because now you remember. You were never meant to live by someone else's script. You were meant to write your own.